Hello students, in this video we are going to discuss the general properties of a group 14 elements which is commonly called as carbon family. Because the first member of this group is carbon, therefore it is commonly called as carbon family. So it is necessary to learn the symbols of these elements and the sequence of the element from top to bottom, that is carbon, silicon, germanium, tin and lead. First, let us discuss the occurrence of group 14 elements. When we talk about carbon, carbon is the 17th most abundant element by mass in the earth crust. So it is the 17th most abundant element in the earth crust. In the elemental state, that is in the single form, that is not in the combined state, it is found in the nature in the form of coal. You are familiar with the coal. That is actually the elemental state of carbon. Next, graphite. Graphite are familiar to you. That is the pencil lead is actually made of graphite. That is a very good conductor also. So that is the form of a carbon, and even the carbon is existing in the nature in the elemental form as diamonds. Diamonds are quite expensive stone. Actually that is made up of carbon. So in the elemental state, the carbon is existing in the nature in the form of coal, graphite and diamond. But in the combined state it exists as metal carbonates, hydrocarbons and different oxides. Different oxides, the most familiar oxide is carbon dioxide. In the air, carbon dioxide is present, and that is one of the important gas which is present in our atmosphere. In the nature, carbon is also existing in the form of metal carbonates. The simple examples or the common examples for metal carbonate, that is calcium carbonate, which is called as commonly the limestone, which is present in the marbles, magnesium carbonate, sodium carbonate, etc. So in the nature, the carbon here existing in the form of carbonates. Even it is also existing in the form of hydrocarbons. Next, it is the essential constitute of all living organism, because the living organism is usually made up of three elements, that is carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. So the combination of these three elements that is the organic compounds. So most of the living organism, whatever the body content is there, that is made up of the organic part, that is made up of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. So the carbon is the essential constitute of all living organism. For example, starch, glucose, proteins, all these having carbons. Next is the isotopes of carbon. Naturally occurring carbon contains two stable isotopes, that is C12 and C13. In addition to these, the third isotope, that is C14, which is radioactive in nature with a half-life of 5,770 years of half-life, because it is used for a radiocarbon dating, that is C14, as because of its radioactive nature. So these are the three isotopes of carbon. Next is the occurrence of silicon. Silicon is a metalloid and has the second most abundance in the earth crust after oxygen, and it is not found in the elemental form. That means they are found in the combined state. It forms 95% of the rocks in the earth. So that means whatever rocks and the earth, even the sand, is actually having the silicon content. It is found in the compounds such as silica. Silica, it is usually the silicon is found in the form of silica. The formula is SiO2, silica SiO2, and it is also existing in the form of silicates. Silica is found as a sand, quartz and mountain crystals in the nature. So in the nature we are quite familiar with the silicon compound in the form of silica that is found in the sand, quartz, mountain crystals in the nature. Next, let us discuss the general properties of group 14 elements. First, let us talk about the electronic configuration. When we make the electronic configuration for these elements, it is very clear that there is a similar pattern of electronic configuration, that is the last electron is in the p orbital. So what is the general electronic configuration for these elements? That is ns2 np2, because 2 electrons are there in the outermost p orbital and 2 electrons are there in the outermost s orbital. What will be the valence electrons for these elements? That is 2 plus 2, 4. So 4 is the valence electron. That's why we can call it as a tetravalent. They forms tetravalent compound and this tendency is called as tetravalency. Usually the carbon are forming the tetravalent compound. When we talk about the covalent radius, there is a considerably increase in the covalent radius from carbon to silicon, that is from carbon to silicon. From here to here, there is a considerable increase in the covalent radius. Thereafter, from silicon to Pb, that is lead, a small increase in the radius is observed. A very little bit changes is observed in these elements. This is due to the presence of completely filled d and f orbitals in the heavier members. Because when we go down, in the case of carbon, d electrons are not available, but when we go down, d and f electrons are available and these orbitals are completely filled. Therefore, because of this reason only, what it is observed, in compared to carbon to silicon, from silicon to lead, we can find there is greater increase. That means there is a small increase in the radius is observed. Next is electronegativity. Due to the small size, the elements of this group are slightly more electronegative than the group 13 elements. So we have already learned left to right electronegativity increases. So in compared to 13 group element, 14 group elements are more electronegative. The electronegative values for the elements from silicon to Pb are almost same. Next, about ionization enthalpy. The first ionization enthalpy of group 14 members is higher than the corresponding members of group 13. So when we compare the first ionization enthalpy, the group 14 members having slightly higher than the corresponding members of group 13. Because of this only, they usually form the covalent bonds. So these are the general properties we have learned for the group 14 elements, which is commonly called as carbon family. So the details of these elements will be discussed in the next video. So this is all about this video. Have a nice day.